I wanted to look at what factors go into choosing a cup of coffee, specifically whether social justice goes through consumers' minds when they're getting their daily caffeine. So I asked a bunch of customers at two different coffee shops on the Tufts University campus, Brown and Brew and The Res, both of which serve fair trade coffee, why they chose to get their coffee at that particular location. I got a lot of it's a good study spot or it's convenient, which shows that at least on a college campus, location may be the most important factor that goes into choosing where to buy a cup of coffee. I didn't know if most coffee drinkers even know what fair trade meant. Until I started this project, it wasn't something I ever gave a thought to. I could make an educated guess about what it was, but that's about it. So I started asking around, what is fair trade?
So if somebody had no idea what fair trade was, how would you define it?
As far as I understand it, fair trade is a certification that a farmer can get, or the trade process can get, that ensures that the farmer's getting paid a fair price for their coffee.
There were certainly people who knew exactly what fair trade was and could give a clear and concise definition. There were also a lot of I don't knows. One very interesting response, and one that goes to the root of the fair trade controversy and debate, was this one: a marketing tactic. The idea of fair trade itself, to create direct connections between the buyer and the grower, is something that pretty much everyone can say is a good thing. Fair trade offers better trading conditions and working conditions to producers and workers. The problem comes in the licensing. In the United States, Fair Trade USA is the leading third-party licensor of fair trade products. The fair trade label is a guarantee to a certain set of terms, so it offers consistency in products and conditions. However, to be certified fair trade, companies must pay a certain minimum price determined by Fair Trade USA, the price of which has been rising. It's possible that coffee co-ops could pay more in certification costs than they get back for selling fair trade coffee. That's where you get what people call fairer than fair trade coffee, or fairly traded coffee that is not fair trade certified. It's possible for companies to pay more to the coffee farmers if they don't have to pay a licensing fee to Fair Trade USA.
Fair trade is kind of certified by a third party, whereas direct trade is really just kind of what it sounds like. The farmers communicate and trade directly with the roasters. So the good thing about that is, at least in our case, the farmers are getting well above fair trade prices, and for the quality, the way I understand it, fair trade is great because it provides a floor for prices. Like, farmers won't have to compete for the lowest price and undersell each other. But it also kind of creates a ceiling because fair trade, people are only willing to pay so much, and the specialty coffees are not necessarily fair trade. So the way that George Howell, who's the roaster for Terroir, the way that he interacts with the coffee growers themselves, he is paying above fair trade prices, and he can also get better coffee because he's, from the beginning of the process, how it's grown, how it's fertilized, etc. He's really making sure each of these practices are the best practice possible.
However, people trust the fair trade label and know that they are getting coffee that was produced under certain conditions when they see that picture. That can be detrimental to companies like Terroir Coffee, who prefer not to buy anonymous coffee and therefore are not fair trade certified. They pride themselves in paying well above fair trade prices for their coffee, but cannot use the fair trade label to market their products.
I think that there have definitely been people who, have called up and asked, do you serve fair trade coffee? And we say no, and they hang up before we can kind of explain that there's something even better than that. But at the same time, George Howell has really been a name in the Boston coffee scene for decades, and he kind of has brought his own set of followers that will go wherever his coffees are. So I think it's been, I'm sure there are definitely people who have been turned away, but it's also brought people to us.
The reason Terroir Coffee is not certified fair trade is because of the problem of anonymity in coffee. Flavor is compromised when blending coffees from different places.
I think one thing that really differentiates the terroir coffees is that each individual each individual farm produces a different kind of coffee, and they really tailor how they roast it to what brings out the flavors in that coffee the best. So rather than like Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks who both roast their coffees kind of until they're burnt little charcoals, and that's a nice like crispy toasty flavor, and I know people love it, but there are other flavors that can really come out of coffee. Some are floral, some are nutty, some are chocolatey, kind of all these things in between, spicy, and so it's exciting to kind of get to know what flavors you like, and kind of, if you love cream and sugar in your coffee, then like maybe a dark roast is perfect, but if you're drinking coffee, you're trying to figure out what's that I taste, it's really fun. But I would definitely want to kind of differentiate between fair trade and specialty coffee. This is what terroir is specialty coffee, and that's the top 1% of all coffee grown in the entire world. So that's not Starbucks is so big that they can't possibly only take the top 1%, they're not. So I just hope people know that fair trade doesn't always indicate the quality of the coffee, and that there are other things to look for.
Price is also an issue. Because companies have to pay the third-party licensor, Fairtrade USA, prices go up. There is also a premium set that goes towards development in the coffee growing areas. So how much does price influence what coffee consumers buy, and whether or not they buy fair trade?
Because, I don't know, one thing I've definitely learned from working at the res is how much coffee prices add up. Because even 1 cup a day, it's I get a medium, which is $1.75 every day, adds up to $6 or $7 a week, over $8 or $9 a week, multiplied across the entire semester.
We used to pay under $6 a pound for the coffee, as an average, and now we're close to $9, so that's I think we did the math, and it was it was close to a 60% increase in the price of coffee. On the other hand, we've only in that same time, we've raised our prices 20%. So we probably should be charging more for the coffee that we serve.
The final question that I asked consumers was, is the coffee you're drinking fair trade? It was astounding to me how many I don't knows I got. The cups from both coffee shops both say that their coffee is fair trade, and especially in Brown & Brew, there are multiple signs on the walls talking about Pura Vida coffee and how its mission is to create good and what that means. One woman in the res said, "I don't know," and then started looking around the shop, even though it said fair trade right on her coffee cup. When I told her it was fair trade, she said, "Oh good, I try to buy fair trade whenever possible. You should advertise more because that's a really good thing." What that shows is that what is really important in the coffee industry is education. Knowing all that I know now about fair trade in the specialty coffee industry, I'm still conflicted about the idea of fair trade labeling. If there were 2 cups of identical coffee sitting next to each other, I would choose the fair trade coffee. But what if the non-fair trade coffee tasted better? And how much more am I willing to spend on a cup of fair trade coffee? And how much farther am I willing to travel to get it? I know now not to be carried along by a label. Just because a coffee isn't certified fair trade doesn't mean it's not fairly traded. There seems to be a lot to consider when choosing a cup of coffee in Boston.